1925, a woman sat down in a small apartment in New York City and wrote something so dangerous, so threatening to the established order of power, that the entire machinery of society moved against her. Not with laws, not with force, but with something far more devastating, with laughter. They called her a dreamer. They called her a mystic. They dismissed her work as the ramblings of a woman who did not understand how the real world operated. But here is what they never told you. Florence Scoville Shinn was not writing poetry. She was not writing religion. She was writing a manual, a technical, precise, almost mechanical manual for the operation of reality itself. And the reason they laughed at her, the reason they pushed her work into the dark corners of the occult section in dusty bookstores, was not because she was wrong. It was because she was dangerously, catastrophically right. Think about that for a moment. Think about what it means if she was right. If she was correct in her central thesis, then every institution that has ever told you that you need them, every system that has ever asked for your obedience in exchange for your survival, every authority that has ever convinced you that the miracle was reserved for the special, the chosen, the lucky, all of it collapses. Because what Shinn proposed was not just spiritual comfort. What she proposed was a complete transfer of power, from the institution to the individual, from the church to the self, from the system to the soul. And that, more than anything else in human history, is the one idea that power cannot afford to let you believe. So today, we are not going to talk about positive thinking. We are not going to talk about vision boards or morning routines or the kind of soft, comfortable self-help content that makes you feel good for 40 minutes and then dissolves the moment your alarm goes off Monday morning. What we are going to do today is something far more radical. We are going to go to the source. We are going to crack open the original technology. We are going to look at the actual mechanics of how reality bends, how money flows, how circumstances shift, and we are going to understand why almost every person who tries this fails, not because the law does not work, but because they are using it backwards. And the moment you understand what backwards means in this context, nothing in your life will ever look the same again. Let us begin with the most uncomfortable truth in all of manifestation teaching. The truth that nobody in the wellness industry wants to put on a poster or sell as a course or turn into a 30-second video clip. The truth is this: you are already manifesting. Right now, in this moment, every single day of your life, you have been manifesting with perfect precision and flawless accuracy. The debt is not an accident. The loneliness is not bad luck. The pattern that keeps repeating itself in your relationships, in your finances, in your career, that pattern is not the universe punishing you. It is the universe obeying you. And that is the most terrifying sentence you will ever hear, because it means that everything you have been experiencing, everything you have been suffering through, everything you have been praying to escape, you have been ordering it, not consciously, not deliberately, but with a power so deep, so constant, so automatic, that it operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even while you sleep, even while you pray for something different. That power is your subconscious mind. And until you understand what it is, how it works, and most critically, what it is currently being fed, you will spend the rest of your life wondering why the affirmations are not working, why the visualizations feel hollow, why you do everything the gurus tell you to do and still wake up in the same reality every single morning. Here is what the subconscious mind is. It is not a mysterious spiritual concept. It is a mechanism. It is the most powerful information processing system in the known universe, and it lives inside your skull. It has one job, one singular, unwavering, relentless job: to create in your outer world an exact match for what it has been programmed to believe about your inner world. That is it. That is the whole secret. That is what Florence Scoville Shinn spent her entire life trying to tell humanity. The subconscious mind does not have opinions. It does not have preferences. It does not want good things for you or bad things for you. It simply executes. It is the most faithful, the most loyal, the most tireless servant you will ever have. The problem, the catastrophic, life-destroying problem, is that most people have no idea who is giving it orders. Because here is the thing about a faithful servant. A faithful servant does whatever they are told. They do not question the wisdom of the command. They do not pause to ask whether this is really what you want. They do not filter for your well-being. They simply do what they are instructed to do with absolute devotion. And right now, for the vast majority of human beings alive on this planet today, the orders being given to that faithful servant are not coming from conscious intention. They are not coming from deliberate choice or careful design. They are coming from fear. They are coming from childhood wounds that never fully closed. They are coming from the voices of people who hurt you, who doubted you, who told you that you were not enough, that life was hard, that money does not grow on trees, that people like us do not get to live like that. Those voices became beliefs. Those beliefs became programs. And those programs are running silently, invisibly, constantly in the background of your life, giving orders to your subconscious servant. Orders that your conscious mind never approved. Orders that your waking self would reject in horror if you could hear them clearly. And the most painful part of all of this? Your subconscious is executing those orders brilliantly, with genius-level precision. When you worry about debt, your subconscious mind does not hear the word debt as a warning. It hears it as a request. When you lie awake at night running the numbers, calculating the shortage, feeling the squeeze of financial lack in your chest, you are not problem-solving. You are programming. You are sitting at the control panel of the most powerful reality-generating machine ever created, and you are typing in coordinates for more of exactly what you do not want. You are visualizing with extreme emotional intensity, which is exactly what every manifestation teacher tells you to do, except you are visualizing the nightmare instead of the dream. And your faithful servant, your magnificent, tireless, perfectly obedient subconscious mind, is taking notes. This is why affirmations fail most people. This is the dirty secret behind the failure rate of manifestation practices. You sit down in the morning and you say the words, I am wealthy. I am abundant. Money flows to me easily and effortlessly. And those words land on the surface of your conscious mind, and they feel good for approximately 11 seconds until the other voice, the deeper voice, the voice that has been running the program for 20, 30, 40 years, pipes up and says, no, you are not. Look at your bank account. Look at your history. Look at what happened last time you tried. Who do you think you are? And that voice is not wrong from the subconscious perspective. That voice is faithfully reporting the data it has been given. It is reading back to you the program you wrote with years of fear and doubt and limitation. And when you try to paste a new belief on top of that old program without dismantling the program first, you do not create change. You create conflict. And conflict in the subconscious mind does not produce miracles. It produces paralysis. It produces that exhausting, demoralizing cycle of trying hard and getting nowhere, of wanting desperately and receiving nothing. So what do? How do we actually change the program? Not with willpower, not with harder visualization, not with louder affirmations or longer meditation sessions or more expensive courses. We change it with something that most people are not willing to do because it goes against every survival instinct they have ever developed. We change it by stopping, completely, totally, radically stopping. Florence Scoville Shinn called this the law of non-resistance. And in her time, this concept was so threatening to the established order that it was effectively erased from mainstream discourse. Because think about what non-resistance means at a societal level. A culture built on competition, on striving, on struggle, on the idea that life is a battle that only the strong survive, that culture requires your resistance, it requires your fear. It requires the energy of your anxiety to keep its engines running. Advertising works because you are afraid of lacking. Politics works because you are afraid of the other. Religion as institution works because you are afraid of judgment. Every system of control in human history has been built on the foundation of your resistance to what you do not want. And Florence Scoville Shinn walked into the middle of all of that and said, "What if the resistance itself is the problem? What if the thing you are fighting is only surviving because you are fighting it? What if the debt is staying because you are terrified of it? What if the sickness is persisting because you are obsessing over it? What if the loneliness is deepening because your entire focus, your entire emotional output, your entire imaginative faculty is locked onto the very thing you are trying to escape? And what if the moment you stopped, truly stopped, not in defeat, not in resignation, but in supreme, almost arrogant confidence? What if the moment you genuinely stopped caring whether the problem stayed or went, the problem lost the only power source it ever had? Because here is the physics of this, and I want you to understand that this is physics, not philosophy, not poetry. Physics. Every system in the physical universe requires energy to sustain itself. A fire needs fuel. A storm needs temperature differential. A structure needs a foundation. Your problems, your limitations, your recurring patterns of lack and suffering, they also require energy to sustain themselves. And the energy they run on is yours. Your fear, your attention, your resistance, your midnight calculations, your anxious rehearsals of worst-case scenarios. Every second that you spend worrying about a problem is a second in which you are personally pouring energy into its foundation. You are the reason it is still standing. You are the architect of your own cage. Not because you are weak, not because you are broken, but because no one ever told you that the way to destroy a wall is not to push against it, but to simply stop pushing and watch it fall. But now we arrive at the part that most teachers skip over, because this is where it gets genuinely difficult and genuinely dangerous if done incorrectly. The law of non-resistance is not the end of the process. It is the beginning. When you stop resisting, when you genuinely release the emotional grip you have had on your problem, something happens in the inner landscape of your mind. A space opens up, a vacuum forms, and nature, as every physicist and every spiritual teacher throughout history has agreed, nature absolutely abhors a vacuum. If you create an empty space in your subconscious, and you do not immediately fill it with something intentional, with something chosen, with something deliberately planted, that space will not stay empty. It will be filled, but not by you. It will be filled by the mass mind, by the collective programming of everyone around you, by the news, by the fear in the culture, by the doubts of your friends and family, by every limiting belief you spent years dismantling, rushing back in with double the force, twice the weight, 3 times the emotional intensity. This is why so many people try non-resistance and end up worse than before. They release the problem, they stop fighting. They achieve a moment of genuine peace, of genuine surrender. And then, because they have no mechanism for what comes next, they drift. They become unmoored. The stillness turns into emptiness. The emptiness turns into numbness. And then the chaos rushes back in, and they conclude that the whole thing was a lie, that letting go does not work, that you have to fight or you will drown. But they did not let go. They just dropped the weight without picking up the anchor, and those are two completely different things. The anchor is what Shinn calls casting the burden, and this is the actual technique. This is the precise, mechanical, step-by-step protocol for transferring a problem from the department of your mind that cannot solve it, your conscious intellect, to the department of your mind that has already solved it, your superconscious. Think about the architecture of the mind for a moment. You have 3 departments. You have the conscious mind, which is the analytical, reasoning, problem-solving mind that operates in the dimension of what you can see and measure and touch. This is the mind that reads spreadsheets and calculates odds and runs risk assessments. It is a brilliant tool for the 3-dimensional world, but it is useless worse than useless, in the fourth dimension. It cannot see the solution that exists just outside the frequency of lack. It is like trying to pick up a radio signal with a hammer. The tool is wrong for the job. Then you have the subconscious mind, the executor, the faithful servant, the power plant with no direction of its own. This is the part we have been talking about, the part that runs on whatever program it has been fed, that creates with absolute precision whatever emotional reality it has been given as instruction. Enormous power. Zero wisdom. And then there is the superconscious. This is the department that the establishment of Shinn's time wanted you to ignore, because the superconscious is where the game ends. The superconscious is the dimension of perfect design. It is the realm where the solution to every problem you have ever had already exists in complete, finished, beautiful form. The debt is already paid there. The healing is already complete there. The love is already present there. The abundance is already flowing there. Not as potential, not as possibility, as reality. As a fixed, permanent, already accomplished fact in a dimension that is superimposed directly over this one, right here, right now, accessible to any human being who learns how to tune to its frequency. Casting the burden is the act of consciously, deliberately, verbally transferring the problem from your overwhelmed conscious mind to your infinitely capable superconscious. It is an act of spiritual delegation. It is the moment where you look at the thing that has been crushing you, the debt, the diagnosis, the broken relationship, the career that will not move, and you say clearly, out loud, with authority and with the full weight of your intention behind every syllable, I cast this burden. I release it completely. I hand it to the infinite intelligence within me. It is no longer mine to carry. It is already solved. It is already done. And I go free. And then, and this is the part that sounds simple but requires the deepest kind of discipline you will ever be asked to demonstrate, you leave it there. You do not go back. You do not check on it. You do not monitor the bank account every hour to see if the money has arrived. You do not scan your body every morning, cataloging whether the healing has progressed. You do not rehearse the conversation you hope to have when the relationship resolves, because every time you do any of those things, you are reaching back into the superconscious and snatching the problem out of its hands. You are saying with your actions what you would never say with your words. You are saying, I do not actually trust this. I do not actually believe this is real. I need to manage this myself. And the moment you say that, the superconscious steps back. It does not argue with you. It does not beg you to trust it. It simply steps back and says, as you wish, carry it yourself. And the weight returns. This is why faith is not a religious concept. Faith is a psychological technology. Faith is the act of continuing to hold a conviction in the face of contrary evidence. It is the discipline of refusing to let the three-dimensional world of appearances tell you what is true about the fourth-dimensional world of design. And the only thing standing between you and every miracle you have ever wanted is your willingness to hold that position across the time lag between the casting and the manifestation. Because there is always a time lag. We live in a dense, slow, friction-filled, three-dimensional world. When you cast a burden in the fourth dimension, the solution is instant. But you are not in the fourth dimension. You are in the third. And in the third dimension, information travels at the speed of circumstance. People have to call. Doors have to open. Conversations have to happen. Events have to align. And while all of that is assembling itself, while the machinery of the miracle is being constructed in the invisible architecture of the universe, you will be standing in the middle of the same reality that prompted you to cast the burden in the first place. The bank account will still show the same number. The test results will still say the same thing. The silence from the person you love will still be deafening. And every single moment of that waiting period is a test. Not a test sent by a God who wants to see how much you can suffer. A test created by physics. A test that is asking one question and one question only. Do you actually believe what you said? Or were you just performing the technique? Because the subconscious mind can tell the difference, and the superconscious can absolutely tell the difference. And the universe, which operates on the principle of resonance, will always match your dominant vibration and not your stated intention. You can say abundance 1,000 times a day, but if your dominant vibration is the low, slow, heavy frequency of fear, of scarcity, of lack, then abundance is just a word you are saying over a foundation of poverty consciousness. And the subconscious will always build from the foundation, not from the decorations you are stacking on top. This is why acting as if is not a trick or a mind game. It is not self-delusion. It is not pretending. It is something far more sophisticated than that. Acting as if is the practice of embodying the frequency of your answered prayer before the three-dimensional evidence appears. It is training your nervous system, your emotional body, your moment-to-moment experience of being alive, to resonate at the frequency of the reality you have claimed. Because the miracle does not appear, and then you feel good. You feel good, and then the miracle appears. The sequence matters. The order matters. The feeling is not the reward for the manifestation. The feeling is the prerequisite. So when you cast the burden of financial lack, you do not wait for the money to arrive before you start carrying yourself like a person who has enough. You start now. Not by spending money you do not have. Not by performing wealth to impress other people, but internally, privately, in the quiet of your own body. You begin to notice what it feels like to exhale, rather than hold your breath. You begin to practice the sensation of security, of enough, of the particular quality of ease that comes from knowing that everything you need is already on its way, already assembled in the fourth dimension, already moving toward you through channels you cannot currently see. You practice that feeling the way a musician practices scales. Not because the concert is happening right now, but because, when the concert comes, you want your fingers to know the music without thinking. And during this practice period, during this bridge between the casting and the manifestation, you will receive something that Shinn called the hunch. And this is where the entire operation either succeeds or fails, depending on whether you know what you are looking at. The hunch is not a feeling. It is not an emotion. It is not the kind of thing you can summon or manufacture or schedule. It is more like a tap on the shoulder from someone standing just outside your field of vision. It is sudden. It is quiet. It is completely specific. It says, call this person, or take that route, or apply for that position, or walk into that building today. And it says it once. It does not repeat itself. It does not argue with you. It does not explain its reasoning. It does not justify itself to your logical mind. It simply delivers the instruction, and then it waits. And what most people do in that moment is exactly what destroys the miracle. They evaluate it. They run it through the intellect. They ask, does this make sense? What is the probability that this will lead to the outcome I want? What will happen if I am wrong? What will people think? And while they are running that analysis, the window closes. The person they were supposed to meet walks past. The opportunity they were supposed to seize moves on. The timing that the superconscious had perfectly calibrated gets broken by the hesitation of the conscious mind. And then nothing happens. And they conclude once again that the whole thing is fantasy. That miracles do not really work. That they are somehow the exception to the law. But they are not the exception. They simply hesitated. They missed the appointment. The divine lead is always characterized by its coolness, by its lack of urgency, by its complete absence of desperation. It does not come from the place of, I must have this. It comes from the place of, here is the next step, follow it. The ego disguises itself as intuition through urgency, through frantic energy, through the voice that says, if I do not do this right now, I will lose everything. That voice is not your superconscious. That voice is your fear, dressed up in the costume of guidance, leading you back into the very patterns you have been trying to escape. Learning to tell the difference between the hunch and the trap is one of the most critical skills in this entire practice. And the way you develop that skill is through stillness. Through the practice of sitting in the silence of non-resistance, often enough and long enough that you begin to recognize the particular quality of the genuine signal. It feels like recognition, not discovery. Not excitement, recognition, like remembering something you already knew. Like finding something you set down a long time ago in a place you had forgotten, but which was always there waiting for you. There is another dimension to this practice that almost no one discusses: the dimension of speech, not affirmations, not the kind of speech you perform for your subconscious mind during a scheduled morning ritual. I mean the speech of your daily life, the offhand comments, the casual complaints, the throwaway statements you make 100 times a day without registering them as programming. Every word you speak is a coordinate. Every sentence is a set of instructions delivered directly to your faithful servant. When you say, "I am always broke," you are not describing reality, you are creating it. When you say, "I can never seem to get ahead," you are not making an observation, you are placing an order. When you tell the story of your struggle, of your hard life, of how difficult things have always been for you, you are not processing your experience. You are encoding it deeper into the subconscious. You are making it more permanent, more structural, more real. Shinn was radical about this. She taught that you must become almost obsessive about the words that come out of your mouth, not in a rigid, anxious, "I must police every sentence" kind of way, but in the way of a craftsman who understands that every stroke of the tool shapes the material. Every word you speak shapes your reality. Not because the universe is listening in some mystical sense, though Shinn would say exactly that, but because you are listening. Your subconscious is always listening. It is recording everything. It is taking notes on every single sentence you say and filing it under "This is what is true about my life." And then it goes to work making that truth more true. So the practice is not just casting the burden in a formal moment of intention setting. The practice is the continuous, daily, moment-by-moment discipline of speaking as though the miracle has already happened. Not lying, not pretending, but refusing to give your voice to the old story, refusing to articulate the fear, refusing to describe the lack, and instead, learning to speak in the language of the fourth dimension. Learning to say things like "something wonderful is on its way to me right now," and meaning it. Learning to say the way is opening, even when the door appears closed. Learning to say, "I do not see the solution yet, but I know it exists and I am moving toward it," and feeling the truth of that statement resonate in your body. Because here is something Shinn understood about the human body that modern neuroscience is only now catching up to. The body does not know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and an actual one. When you speak words that carry strong emotional charge, your nervous system responds, as though those words describe a current reality. Your heart rate changes. Your neurochemistry shifts. Stress hormones or abundance chemicals are released depending on the emotional content of what you are saying. Your entire biological system is constantly being tuned by the frequency of your speech. And the frequency of your biology becomes the frequency of your attraction. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. And what you are is largely determined by what you say, and how you say it, and what you feel when you say it. This brings us to the piece of this technology that is most misunderstood, most abused, and most responsible for the failure of manifestation practices worldwide: the role of gratitude. Not the performed gratitude of writing 5 things you are grateful for in a journal every morning as part of a productivity routine. Real gratitude, the kind that stops you mid-stride. The kind that comes from suddenly realizing with the full weight of your consciousness that you are alive, that you have a mind capable of understanding these ideas, that somewhere in the invisible architecture of reality, the perfect design of your life is already complete, and the only thing between you and it is the frequency you are choosing to broadcast right now in this moment. That kind of gratitude is not a feeling, it is a technology. It is the fastest, most direct, most reliable method for shifting your vibrational frequency from the low, slow, heavy wavelength of fear and lack to the high, clear, open wavelength of abundance and receiving. When you are genuinely grateful, not performing gratitude, but actually feeling it, you cannot simultaneously be afraid. The two frequencies cannot coexist. You cannot be in the vibration of enough and the vibration of not enough at the same moment. It is a physical impossibility. They occupy different frequencies, different bandwidths. When you tune to gratitude, you tune away from fear. And when you tune away from fear, you stop feeding the problems that fear has been sustaining. And when the problems lose their energy source, they begin to dissolve. Not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly, steadily, almost imperceptibly at first, until one day you look up and realize that the thing that was consuming your life 6 months ago has simply ceased to be a factor. Now I want to address something directly, because this is the point at which people either break through or break down. This entire practice, the law of non-resistance, casting the burden, acting as if, following the hunch, guarding your speech, living in gratitude, all of it requires one thing above everything else, one quality that cannot be faked, cannot be purchased, cannot be inherited from someone else, cannot be given to you by any teacher or any book or any course. It requires the willingness to be wrong about who you are. The willingness to look at the story you have been telling about your life, the story of your limitations, your bad luck, your difficult circumstances, your damaged past, and say clearly, without self-pity and without self-blame, this story is not the truth about me. This story is a program that was installed without my consent and has been running without my awareness. And starting today, I am writing a new program. Not because the old story was a lie exactly, the events happened, the pain was real, the struggle was genuine, but the meaning you assigned to those events, the conclusions you drew about what they meant about your worth, your potential, your right to receive abundance and love and health and joy, those conclusions are not facts, they are choices, and you can choose differently. That is not a small thing. Do not let the simplicity of the statement deceive you into thinking it is easy. Choosing a new story about yourself when the old story has been confirmed by decades of evidence, when every relationship seems to echo it back to you, when the bank account and the mirror and the patterns in your life all seem to be insisting that the old story is the truth. Choosing a new story in the face of all of that requires a specific quality of audacity, of stubbornness, of what Shinn would call spiritual nerve. The nerve to decide that the evidence of the four-dimensional reality is more real than the evidence of the three-dimensional one. The nerve to say, I am not what my circumstances have been, I am what I choose to become, and I am choosing now. This is what Shinn meant when she talked about the divine design. Every single human being who has ever lived arrived here with a complete, perfect, fully realized vision of their highest life already encoded in their superconscious mind, not a vague aspiration, not a general direction, a specific, detailed, exquisitely designed blueprint, the perfect expression of your particular gifts, the perfect alignment of your particular purposes, the exact configuration of relationships, resources, opportunities, and experiences that would allow you to live at the absolute fullest possible expression of what you are. That design has never been corrupted. It has never been damaged by your past. It has never been diminished by your failures, or your fears, or your wrong turns. It is sitting in the superconscious, fully intact, fully realized, perfectly preserved. Like a seed that can lie dormant for 100 years in frozen ground and still germinate perfectly when conditions change, your divine design is waiting. The conditions that will allow it to germinate are the conditions you create through this practice, through non-resistance, through surrender, through trust, through the radical, audacious, world-defying decision to stop fighting your way through life and start flowing toward it. One last thing before I give you the challenge. The thing about this path that nobody tells you, because it makes it harder to sell, is that it does not end. The day you cast one burden is not the day you stop having burdens. The day you follow one hunch is not the day the ego stops setting traps. The day you release one fear is not the day fear stops knocking on the door. This is a practice, a daily, ongoing, sometimes difficult, sometimes luminous, always humbling practice of choosing the fourth dimension over the third, of choosing faith over evidence, of choosing the divine design over the mass mind. Some days, it will feel effortless. Some days, you will wake up in the absolute certainty that the universe is assembling your miracle with devoted precision, and you will move through the world with a lightness that feels almost indecent. And other days you will wake up, and the fear will be right there waiting for you, as immediate and heavy as it ever was. And on those days, the practice does not look like inspiration. On those days, the practice looks like a decision. A quiet, private, deliberate decision to say once again, I cast this, I release this, I trust this, it is done, I am free. And over time, over the accumulation of those decisions, something shifts. Not just in your outer circumstances, though they do shift, sometimes with a speed and a drama that will leave you genuinely speechless, but in you, in the quality of your inner experience, in the way you move through the world, in the way problems land on you, in the way you receive. You become someone who lives, as Shinn described it, on the spiritual plane. Someone for whom the miraculous is not an occasional extraordinary event, but the ordinary texture of life. Someone who has learned to live in the fourth dimension while walking in the third. Someone who knows that the game is not won by the strong, or the clever, or the well-connected, or the lucky. The game is won by the still. By the ones who learn to stand in the eye of the storm and declare with perfect peace, none of these things move me. By the ones who mastered the discipline of non-resistance, who learned to cast the burden without looking back, who followed the hunch without hesitation, who guarded their speech like a gate, who practiced gratitude like a martial art, who chose their story over the evidence, every single day, until the evidence finally caught up with the story. That is the invitation before you today. Not a promise of instant results, though sometimes the results are instant, sometimes shockingly, impossibly instant, in ways that will make you question everything you thought you knew about how reality works. But an invitation into a practice. An invitation to take the technology that Florence Scoville Shinn encoded in that manuscript in 1925, the technology they tried to laugh out of existence, the technology they pushed into the shadows because it was too powerful, too democratizing, too threatening to every structure of control that depends on your fear, and to make it yours. To install it in your daily life, to use it not as a last resort when things get desperate, but as a first response, as a reflex, as the automatic operating system of a mind that has finally understood who it actually is and what it is actually capable of. You were not born to struggle. You were not born to barely survive. You were not born to work your whole life in service of someone else's vision, while your own divine design lies dormant and unused in the depths of your superconscious. You were born for the miracle, not the miracle that happens to other people in other circumstances. The miracle that has your name on it, that has always had your name on it, that is sitting in the fourth dimension right now, fully assembled, fully ready, fully waiting for the moment you decide, completely and irrevocably, to stop fighting your way toward it and simply open your hands and receive it. The way is open. The design is perfect. The burden is cast. And you are free.